Enjoy another life-changing message from Pastor Steve Cioccolanti, made possible by friends and partners of Discover Ministries. And now, here is your host, Pastor Steve Cioccolanti.
Hey, Pastor Steve.
Yeah, Anna's a famous lady. You were on what TV show?
I wouldn't say famous. Survivor, reality TV show.
Okay, well, more famous than me. I was never on Survivor. Do you tell people that you are Russian?
Yeah, it's
You're Russian American. People, you don't know whether to say that in America because there's such a Russophobia, but I don't think that's very justified. But please tell us.
I'm proud to be Russian. I'm actually half Russian, half Jewish. My dad is Jewish. My mom is Russian. I love my native country, but anytime someone asks me my nationality, I don't say I'm Russian American. I say I'm American.
So the breaking news that I wanted to get your opinion on is that Vladimir Putin has created a new visa to go to Russia. Now, Russia has been very difficult for us as Australians to go into. This new visa is quite interesting because it shows where Russia is at. So it's called Shared Value Visa. Have you heard of that?
You know what? I heard of it the other day. I did not get a chance to read into it, but I did hear about it.
Okay, so the new Shared Value Visa is called an anti-woke visa. Basically, Putin is opening up the doors to a list of countries that are heading the wrong way. He calls it neoliberalism, wokeism, and people who are fed up with it, who feel like it's a dangerous thing in their country and they want to leave, they can go to Russia. Now, just to preempt anyone that would call me, I don't know what they would call me, but any particular name, I have no intention of going to Russia other than maybe to have a nice tourist time or a mission trip. But because I personally have seen, like I've never been to Russia, but I've seen thousands of Russians leave Russia. Mm-hmm. They keep flowing into Thailand. They love to go and retire in Thailand. So if Russia is a great destination, then I would think, why are they doing that? Why don't they stay? And the other issue that you've got to consider, and this visa is very interesting. I do want to get to this and explain to people, but you just got to be careful because if you just migrate or get this visa and you become permanent resident in Russia, you probably will be setting yourself up as a toxic person in the eyes of the Western nations. So as long as we have something to do in the West, ministry, business, right, life, then I think this is not something you just jump into. But with your perspective, what do you think? That he's offering anyone to come into Russia, no need for knowledge of Russian language, Russian culture, none of the normal requirements. All it is you have to sign a statement, kind of like a statement of faith, that you will uphold Russian values. And the first one is you must be pro-life, all right, anti-abortion, if you want to say it that way. You've got to be pro-family. You've got to believe that spiritual things matter more than material things. I thought that's fascinating because here in America, I was talking with Clay Clark and wondering what is the problem here when we're supposed to be a Christian nation and yet Christian businessmen, they don't go to church. They don't want to attend any of the spiritual stuff, like even at Reawaken or his business conference. They would rather just stick with the money-making side of things. So what do you think? Is Russia the enemy, or is Russia more Christian than the USA?
Having been born in Russia, going back many times with my family, again, visiting family and friends, Russia is it's really a Christian nation, very family oriented, very pro-life, very pro-God. There's a lot of Christians, like I said, but there's also a lot of Jews as well. Of course, there was a lot of anti-Semitism during communism. Actually, there was a lot of anti-religion during communism, Christians included. They really came after the pastors, Jewish leaders, doctors, anyone that has an intellectual mind. But I would say, this is a great thing. Of course, I think it's great to open up the country. Obviously, there's a lot of vitriol against Russia with what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. I try to be careful talking about it because I have family in both places. I'm praying for both countries. As many good things that President Putin has done, there's some things that, man, I wish he really was radically saved. So I'm praying for both. I'm praying for, just like I'm praying for President Joe Biden, I'm praying for President Trump. So, the Lord said partiality is a sin. So we have to pray for both. We have to bless our enemies. But regarding this visa, I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that he's opening it up. I mean, I had some people that I know actually visit Russia and came back to America during this war. And I've heard some of their American citizenship was revoked. Maybe wait after the war, but it's a beautiful, beautiful nation.
Yeah. Are you talking about the war with the U.S. or are you talking about the war with Ukraine?
I'm talking about the war between Russia and Ukraine right now. There's perilous times there on the border. So it's heartbreaking to see what has occurred the last few years. So I'm praying that the Lord really get to President Putin and also President Zelensky. And I pray the fear of the Lord on both of them to really find Jesus, really get saved, and really help their nations. Because I have to tell you, there's a lot of people fleeing Russia because of the lack of the Constitution, right? We have an American Constitution. We have freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Even though they have freedom of religion, it's not really freedom of speech. The journalists go missing, or journalists end up getting killed, found dead in the street. So unfortunately, there is still very much a communist tone over the nation, although GMOs are banned, right? Anyone that farms GMO crops, they're put in jail. Any pro-life they're pro-life, they're anti-abortion. So there's a lot of good things that President Putin has done, but there's also bad, and I don't mind calling it out when I see it.
Russophobia is widespread in the American church. I don't think that the Bible teaches us to hate any ethnicity, any nationality. We're to love all people that Christ died for. But there's a particular teaching in the American church that Russia's the enemy. And this is one of the things that actually gets me uninvited or not invited by the American pastors is I just don't see that in the Bible. I don't see, I talked to General Flynn and I showed him, he asked me, some questions about what's coming up next. What does the Bible say about the wars? And I just gave it to him. This is, our role is to tell him the Bible. Mm-hmm. And I asked him point blank, I read Ezekiel 38:39 to him. And I said, these are the list of countries that are involved. And I don't see Russia in there. Do you think Russia will invade Israel? And he just flat out said, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's quite interesting, the attack on certain nations, right? The vitriol against America, the vitriol, of course, against Israel, and the vitriol against Russia. I don't think it's a coincidence. I do believe that Russia is one of the sheep nations in the end times. And that's why I really believe that the Lord is really dealing with President Putin, really perfecting him in the fear of the Lord, because I do believe he loves the Russian people. I do believe he loves freedom. He loves democracy. I really believe that. And I have no reason to question that. But of course, there's some tactics that, can be avoided. But so again, I'm praying for that country. There's a lot of prophecies, even my mom shared with me when I was a child of Russian prophets saying how Russia will be really used in the end days. It'll be a safe haven for a lot of people are actually going to travel to Russia. So I think it actually aligns with this visa, aligns with one of the, prophetic words that were spoken decades and decades ago of Russia really being attacked, but really being used by God in the end days. So I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a goat nation. I think that there's a reason why there's such a vitriol against Russia, because of course it's a massive nation. It's the second biggest, second biggest country in the world, but also because
what's the biggest country in the world?
Well, I should say continent, Asia, right? So Asia, and then
okay, so in terms of population, you could say China and India are bigger, but Russia, in terms of landmass, stretches over 11 time zones. It's massive. It's massive.
Massive. And I want to share this too about the Russian people. There's a big misconception, especially growing up in Russia as a Russian, American. But people think that, it's because of the Cold War, Russians hate America. Not true at all. When I went back to Russia, I've noticed how much Russians love America. They love freedom. They love what we stand for. They love that we had our own independence from England. So they love this country. There's no animosity of, Russians or Americans. No, it's not true at all. So in fact, I know a lot of people, generals and people in the army that were scared to go to Russia after the Cold War. And they realized, my God, Russians really love us. They really love Americans. So it's not true what the news says.
From the anti-woke visa that they're probably more Christian than we are right now. They're defending the biblical values. Mm-hmm. It's hard for Americans to fathom that because we're just so conditioned and so honestly brainwashed to hate a group of people. And I think it's unscriptural. It's unscriptural to do that. Here's another thing you mentioned. Russia has implemented a comprehensive ban on the cultivation and production of GMOs. Mm-hmm. That was signed into law by Vladimir Putin on July 4th. Did you know that? That
I
was
did.
it was a July 4th event back in 2016. So GMOs are outlawed, and I think they are not common in Australia. I don't know if they're outlawed, but they're actually outlawed in Russia. So you see RFK, he's teaming up with Trump now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and his new motto is he's taking MAGA and turning it to MAHA, make America healthy again.
Yes. In fact, I just had someone who sent me a conference that JFK is going to be doing in the beginning of November, because as you know, Pastor Steve, the Lord has really, highlighted the importance of health. In fact, the Lord told me when I got saved and he took me out of poker, I said, well, Lord, do you want me to go to medical school? And the Lord said, you can if you want to. How amazing God is. He says, you can if you want to. It's his permissible will, but it's not his perfect will. He said, but you're going to be doing full-time ministry. In fact, your ministry is going to be a bit different. It's not just the soul and the spirit. It's also the body. I'm going to highlight and show you my technologies around the world, and you're going to put it onto a portfolio and call it Healthy Technologies. And I thought, Lord, I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything about technologies. The Lord said, good. It's my business. It's a God business. I said, okay, Lord. So we started highlighting, Pastor Steve, and you're very well aware of it because, Pastor Steve has a bunch of the technologies. But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how the Lord has highlighted and brought different companies the best water filtration system that will get rid of fluoride and chlorine and pharmaceuticals and heavy metals and glyphosates. He highlighted an air purification system that, cleans the air just like it's in the best hospitals in the world. You can actually literally do open heart surgery in your home. If you have asthma or allergies, it really help with that. I mean, the most amazing grounding mattresses. So I was really blown away by the technologies that the Lord highlighted and really brought together under one portfolio. So, speaking of President Trump and RFK Jr., what's amazing is, I don't know, Pastor Steve, if you heard, but there was just a prophetic word that someone sent me from Clement back in 2009, talking about how Kennedys are going to team up with a Republicans. So Kennedys are going to team up with Republicans. And I thought, wow, how perfect is that? That's exactly what we're seeing right now.
As you have spoken that this nation would change, you told me many months ago that the enemy would come and he'd lay his hand and he saw it on the Kennedy family. God, I'm praying that you would do something miraculous. Come on. May there be an almighty Damascus Road conversion of a kind that will shake this nation. We speak not against Catholicism or one of the religions, but you have had your stronghold for too long. And in the Northeast tonight, I as a prophet make a declaration upon the Northeast that the Kennedys will have a flame of fire and a baptism that shall come from the Holy Spirit that will shake both Democratic and Republican parties. And the Spirit of the Lord said, because of that Spirit that was brought down tonight, I will do it. If you will pray for it, I will do it, says the Spirit of God, and do a miraculous thing for that family, says the Lord. Come on. Yeah. Come on.
And it took 15 years for that prophetic word to come to pass. So people need to be patient, but the prophetic word is so relevant for us today. So the Kennedys, the Kennedy meaning Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whose father was killed, whose uncle was killed by the deep state, for him to come in with Trump, it's such a winning move. It's so good. Yes. They keep talking about the dream team, but I like the fact that God is using him in particular to expose big pharma, and also to bring us back. I hope he will do something like what Russia does, which is, I'd like to interview him. Actually, we'll get him on, and he should just ban GMOs. But I mean, how realistic is that in America? You're going to have such a fight on your hand, right?
Do it though. You have to do it. You have to put the ban in and let the authorities and the courts deal with the people that want to grow GMO. At the end of the day, it is unhealthy for the people. In fact, actually, my pastor, Pastor Ruth, we were praying the other day, and the Lord said, GMD, genetically modified demons. We said, Lord, what is this? And the Lord said, it's so demonic, the agenda to genetically modify the perfect creation of the Lord.
Yeah, maybe talk about that a little bit for our audience, because I know people are looking. I was looking, before you told me about it, I was looking for good water filter. You gave me a whole house filtration system that is very easy to use. It's cleaning my whole house, and some air filtration. How are they different? So just like in a short summary, how is the air filtration system and the water filtration system, why is it so important? And how is, what you found, what God gave you different?
Yeah, the Lord told me to dig in, to research. So I was on a researching quest, years and years and years ago. I just went down the rabbit hole in health, and I was blown away to see. And the Lord said, if you don't have a filter, you become the filter. If you don't have an air purifier, if you don't have a water purifier, you become the filter. And there's a lot of hazardous reactions that happen in our body and affect our health, our mental state, our lifespan. In fact, the Lord said, my people perish because of lack of knowledge in Hosea. So it's not just the fact that, the enemy is tricking us and deceiving us. He's also deceived us, obviously, medically as well. And he's also put things in our water, put things in the air that we have to be mindful of. We can't be ignorant of it. The Lord said God's people, their lifespan is shorter than they're supposed to be. And they're not completing everything the Lord has planned for them. Because again, we are just ignorant and we're like, you know what? We don't want to know. We don't care. No, you do want to know. You do want to care. You want to care about yourself. You want to care about your family. You want to care about your community. So, again, to God be all the glory. He showed these different companies. And so the whole house water filter you have, that one is the best one I found on the market. Literally gets rid of fluoride, pharmaceuticals. There's no water filter company I found that actually targets pharmaceuticals or glyphosates. It also gets rid of forever chemicals and chloride.
Hey, can I ask you, for instance, no guy that I know wants to be, doped up or pumped full of estrogen. And I heard that the water table in America is full of estrogen because of all of the synthetic estrogen that people are taking, hormonal therapy and things like that. It doesn't just go into the women, does it? It somehow goes into the men.
Correct.
So what do you do with something like that?
Correct. So men have receptors. In fact, actually, men do release a little bit of estrogen, right? But you're right. Women are throwing a lot of the pharmaceuticals and birth control sometimes down the toilet, and that is not filtered out, right? The city, the municipal department in your local city, they are taking out the physical things, like if there's hair in the water, they also filter out some contaminants, but the rest of it, they don't touch. The rest of it, they don't care. So you have pesticides, you have herbicides in the water, you have pharmaceuticals, you have tiny hormones as well. What's amazing about this filter is that it will do that. It will filter that out. It's amazing.
That's been tested.
Yes, it's been tested. In fact, this is the only company I found that had a 6-page report on everything it removes clinically from an independent source. So you have that. You have an air filtration.
Would you mind if I put that up on our website? Because we have a store where we feature people that, they've shown their products. I test. I don't promote every one of them. I don't accept every one of them. We've liked your water filter. So you're saying that the one that you gave to us, it will filter out all these things in the 6-page report.
By God's grace, yes. And some of the numbers are 99%, 98, 96, 99.9. So what I also recommend, if you have the ability to, is not only have a whole house water filter, also add an under the sink filter. So any little thing that might have passed through the whole house filter, before you drink it, it will actually be filtered out also by this. There's new technology released by the same company with the under the sink filter. I mean, they've been making water filters for over 35 years. They've been in business over 67 years. It's a family owned business. It's actually very, very well known. And again, like the Lord has said, this is one of the companies. This is one of, in fact, what's amazing, Pastor Steve? I went to, because, when the Lord highlights a company, I do my research on them. I also call them to meet them. So I fly in, I meet the owners, I meet the vice presidents, I see the warehouse. I want to know where it's made. If it's made in America, I want to work with them. If it's made in, a lot of companies I work with made in Italy, made in Poland, made in Slovenia. So a lot of their products are made in America. Great. So I met the owner, and the Lord showed me vision, and I saw him sleeping, and I saw a notepad next to his bed. And I heard the Lord say, I'm going to give him more dreams of technologies. And, I talked to this gentleman. I said, sir, and I can tell he knows of the Lord. He's not saved just yet at that moment. And I said, sir, I don't know if you have dreams of these technologies, but I hear the Lord saying, obviously you do, because the Lord said, I'm going to give him more dreams. And I see a notepad next to you. And he looked at me, he looked at his wife, he said, say that again. And I told him. And his wife was like, oh my goodness. He sleeps with a notepad next to his bed. In fact, he wakes me up so many times in the middle of the night because he's rustling around trying to draw the design that he saw in the dream. And so he realized, and at the convention the next day at this big conference, he said it on the stage. He said, I'm starting to think these were not my technologies. I'm starting to think that God gave me these technologies because I have them in dreams. So look at this, we see it all across the Bible. In fact, it's pretty amazing. The Lord, this is why he said, these are my technologies. These are my companies. And so, Rife Technology, Frequency Machine also is on our Healthy Home website. There's also, a grounding mattress, all non-toxic, no chemicals, made in Italy. It helps inflammation, helps pain. You'll literally feel like you're sleeping outside, like you're camping. There's silver throughout the entire mattress. It'll be the last mattress you ever purchase. I mean, it's just phenomenal. The air filtration thing, that filter you have, Pastor Steve, you've had for many years, even before you met me, that's in the best hospitals in the world. It sanitizes 99.9999936 nines. I can't say 100%, but it will sanitize your environment. So anyone has asthma, allergies, COPD, really, really beneficial for them. In fact, my sister has not used her inhaler in over 5 years. It's pretty amazing.
Wow. So it helps with, what was she using an inhaler for? She
had severe asthma. And right before COVID, she had an uptick of asthma. My mom called me, and who and she, by the way, she passes her hello. And she was using her inhaler 16 times a day. When my mom told me, I didn't believe her. I thought, there's no way, I've never heard of anyone. So I called my sister, and she said, no, it's really bad. And she said, they just got a little kitten. The kids are excited, and she feels bad. Long story short, 6 months later, after I sent her the machine, she called me and said, Anna, you're never going to believe it. I said, what? She goes, that kitten, she's a cat now, she's sleeping in my bed. She hasn't used her inhaler in over 4 years. Always have a new virus, right? Same fear, different year. You have H1N1 one year, you have swine flu the next year, you have bird flu, then you have COVID-19. So I tell people it's preventative. The Lord said preparation, and have wisdom with preparing your family for what's coming ahead. In fact, Pastor, I've saved so much money not buying bottles of water. I thought bottled water is safer than tap water. Turns out there's bacteria in the bottle's water. There's chlorine in the water. There's fluoride. Forget about the forever chemicals. Forget about the plastics also in the water. I have saved so much money investing in a system that, by the way, if God forbid there's an emergency and they close the stores, you will have filtered water. You can feel safe drinking your tap water and knowing that the pharmaceuticals are gone, the heavy metals are gone, the fluoride is gone, the forever. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm shocked that I never thought I would drink tap water, but it's so filtered. It tastes just like I'm camping outside in the mountains. That's how phenomenal it is.
You're kind of like RFK, Make America Healthy Again. I'm totally for that. Yes. America is in such dire straits in terms of health. Almost everything that you can eat in the shelves and in the restaurants are just so they're killing you slowly. So we're going to put that up in discoverchurch.online. Go to our shop and take a look at the affiliates, and you'll see lots of great things that I have used myself. And I say, okay, since you're my family, I'll tell you what I'm using. Okay. And you're offering any kind of discount for people if they go to our website?
Yes. In fact, this is the best deal that we have given. I'm not just saying that. 15% off. 15% off. If you want prices on some products that are on the website, just email us. Say, hey, I saw you on Pastor Steve's show. Can you please tell me the price of this? So thank you for being patient. Sorry that some products don't have a price. Just email us, call us as well. We have a team that will help you. We will help work with your budget. There's financing as well. There's some of them where we have free financing, no interest. So you want to take advantage of the specials. 15%, guys, is phenomenal. These are really health investments. By the way, if you don't have Pastor Steve's books, you're on living under a rock. I mean, the prophetic book of Encyclopedia of Numbers is one of my favorite books. President Trump's pro-Christian accomplishments, and then also
which they've banned 3 times on Amazon. 3 times. They just unbanned it again. I don't know what it is, but that book is anointed, and the enemy knows it. He just doesn't like that book. I do now recommend it more. Now that they banned it 3 times, I'm like, let's show the devil he cannot stop us. But you don't know how long Amazon will do it, so just go and grab that.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you've been a friend to the ministry. Now, I just want to close and come back to the Russia theme. I feel like we got a theme that's tying it all together. For those who don't know, I don't believe Ezekiel 38:39 has anything to do with Russia, the country that's north of Russia. There's a lot of countries north of Russia. And if you make a straight line from Jerusalem due north to the Arctic North Pole, it does not cross downtown Russia. In fact, if anything, it crosses Kiev, right, Ukraine, and then it crosses also Turkey. I think it nearly crosses the capital of Turkey. So there's a lot of things that are misinformation that people just heard for decades and decades, and it makes people feel like Russia's the enemy. So when the Iran was about to attack Israel, I told people, I said, they're not going to do it yet because they don't have their nuclear facilities, first of all, so they're not going to risk it. You know, if you attack Israel now, your nuclear facility is going to be blown to smithereens. So it's not going to happen. So people are going on and on, they're sensationalizing it for weeks and weeks, and now it's kind of calmed down. And then they were thinking Russia's going to attack Israel at any moment. And I don't believe it. General Flynn doesn't believe it. I don't think the Bible says it. So I want to tell you some of the interesting things about Russia. It just seems fascinating. This country invented the AK-47, put the first man into space, put the first satellite into orbit, is very strongly Christian. About 50% identify themselves as Christian. Many more Russians died fighting for freedom in World War II than American soldiers, and even more than the Germans. The Germans lost about 8 million of their citizens, but the Russians lost 27 million. They have the longest railway line in the world, going from Moscow, I guess, all across Siberia. They've got the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. It's got 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water. Mm-hmm. It just sounds like if we're friends with this country, there would be world peace, there'd be prosperity. We're not going to be fighting wars on every front. And somehow the deep state doesn't want peace for humanity. And we're demonizing these people who now they're offering this anti-woke temporary residence visa. I just want to read it out again. They say there's a decree that the Russian government describes as you can get this visa if you share traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. They have a list of what those things are. What part of it is you got to be pro-life, you've got to be pro-family, you've got to consider spiritual things more important than material things. And this visa means that you'll bypass the usual bureaucratic hurdles. It will eliminate traditional quotas that restrict the number of temporary resident permits. And then I've got my fact checker giving me how nice would it be to go to Russia? I'm not going to live in Russia, but I'm just saying these are objective facts. Family of 4 can live there for an average of $1,758 a month without rent. Okay. Cost of living in Russia is 58.5% lower than in the United States. And I'm just amazed at how inflation, the Biden inflation, now they call it the Kamala inflation, is hurting people over here. Rent in Russia is 77% lower than in the United States, and the processing time for this temporary visa is 20 days. It's called Share Valued Visa Program. So just interesting that it might surprise people that the nations that we used to look down on, they were the Soviet Union. We're totally anti-communist. We don't believe in Marxism at all as Christians. But that was the past. Like, we won that war, the Cold War, and we should have said, hey, everybody lay down your arms because the Cold War is over. But then NATO continued to make Russia out to be the enemy and kept encroaching closer and closer. I'm by no means saying Putin is a saint. I'm not saying the KGB is better than the CIA. I'm not into that world at all. But it might surprise people that the Bible often talks about how people that we look down on and that we would never think God would use, those are the people that God ended up using, even for our own chastisement and correction.
Yeah, that's so true. And we know that the deep state infiltrated Ukraine and put a president in that people really didn't want. And so we're aware of the enemy's tactics. We don't want to be ignorant to it. So I 100% agree with you, Pastor Steve. I think, they put Sputnik into orbit. It was the first ones, like you said, that put a man into orbit, and also, for satellite. But one of the biggest facts that you mentioned that most people are not aware of is that 27 million Russians lost their life during World War II. Germany lost 8 million. America lost anywhere from 5 to 6 million. And if it wasn't for Russia, we would be living under a one world government, and it would have been very difficult times we'd all be living in. So, thank God for Mother Russia, right? So thank God for God really using them. So I don't think it's a coincidence, like we said before, of the attack on America, on Israel, on Russia. I think the Lord really highlighted these countries more than ever. And of course, when our deep state can't control someone, if they can't control a massive nation full of minerals and resources, I mean, it is a very rich nation, with how God blessed them. So it's not surprising that our deep state can't control them, so they're villainizing them. We know that we're living in the end days. We're not at the end just yet, but we're right there, and Jesus is coming back very, very soon.
Yeah, that's a great message. Hey, for those who are into prophecy, I'm going to end with this, and it's a little bit of an overview that this is the kind of overview you get from our ministry, so I'm going to give it to you. But if you just turn into your table of contents in the Bible and you look at the prophets, there are 12 minor prophets, there are 4 major prophets. And did you know that nearly all of them had one peculiar message? It was a message that was so hard to receive that God just repeated it about 12 times. So 3 out of the 4 major prophets, that's Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And then 12 minor prophets, 9 of them, okay, are pre-Babylonian captivity. And their message over and over is the same, that God was about to use a nation that they despise called Babylon. And God was going to use a leader that they despise called Nebuchadnezzar. And God was going to use them to chastise Israel. So Israel is the nation of God, the people of God. And yet God was going to bypass them and say, Babylon is coming, is going to lead you into captivity. It's going to be for your own good, and you should seek the prosperity of Babylon. I mean, it's a message that was so difficult to understand that God said it at least 12 different ways, 12 different times to 12 different people. It was the main message of the Old Testament. If you're ever confused about the Old Testament, I've just summarized the prophets for you. I'm going to read to you what happened at the end of Jeremiah 52. This is the fulfillment of it. And just think, as I'm reading this, I see America and I see Russia in this as well. So have a look at this in Jeremiah 52, verse 8. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king, this is the king of Judah, and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. All his army was scattered from him. This is after a 2-year-long siege, by the end of which they were in famine, they were hungry, and when the Babylonians broke the wall, the king ran for it. This is what happened. The king ran with his army. So they took the king. Interesting, the Babylonians took the Israeli or the Judean king and brought him up to the king of Babylon in Riblah in the land of Hamath, and he pronounced judgment on him. See, this is like a template of the end time. Justice is coming, and is coming in a way that the believers themselves cannot even imagine. They can't fathom it. That's why God repeated this message for most of the Old Testament. Then the king of Babylon killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. He killed all the princes of Judah in Riblah. He also put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and the king of Babylon bound him in bronze fetters and took him to Babylon and put him in prison till the day of his death. I mean, I read that and I thought, what would be the equivalent of that? What would be the equivalent? That would be like if God said, Russia is coming, and Russia is going to take who? Anybody that they consider to be part of the deep state. Maybe it would be Anthony Fauci, Joe and Hunter Biden, Kamala Harris, all these people that they know have been in Ukraine and have been profiteering off of it. And then Russia says, I'm going to pronounce judgment on these American leaders in the motherland and execute them. Can you imagine how difficult that message would be for any American, especially a Christian, to accept? And that was the message for hundreds of years. God sent prophet after prophet and said, I love you, Israel. I love the Jewish people, but you've been so lukewarm. You've gone so far and you're so rebellious and stubborn that I'm going to use somebody unlikely. This is the message. Be careful in the end time. While we're cheering on our side and thinking we are the good guys, what happened if God says, I'm going to use somebody that you don't expect at all? That is the biggest prophetic message of the Old Testament. Can God use somebody that you, the church, the Christian, you don't approve of, you think it's out of left field, and suddenly they're there and they've conquered or they've invaded? I think we as a church have to be very careful because that's the message of the prophets in the end time. And when a nation is saying that we're upholding biblical values, traditional marriage, we're banning GMOs, they're actually doing the very things we're praying to happen in America. We ought to be on the same side. Stop this eschatology foolishness that Russia is going to invade Israel. If it happens, it doesn't fulfill any prophecy. It's not in the Bible, but I don't think it's going to happen at all, and neither does General Flynn.
I really do believe, just like we said back in 2020 about the Red Sea moment in this country, the Lord said it's judgment time. It's not just a correction, it's actually God's judgment. So we don't want to be in the side of being passionately wrong like the other side. The Lord showed me a coin. He said, when you're angry and you hate the left, you're the different side of the same coin. And when that judgment comes, you don't want to be swept away with it. So in Jesus' name, be right with God, be right with each other. Love your enemies, pray for them, pray for those and bless those who despitefully use you, right? In Jesus' name, thank you, Pastor Steve.
God bless you, Discover Church. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Keep looking up.
You've been listening to Pastor Steve Cioccolanti, a prophetic voice in our time, and this ministry is made possible by the generosity of partners and friends. Please consider becoming one today. For more information about Discover Ministries or to obtain teaching resources to help you grow spiritually, visit our web store at discover.org.au. Pastor Steve wants to remind you, love God, love people, and look up.